This is Sean with Voices of On. We're here at the Meridian for Saving Stories, Meridian.com. We're with one of the staff, Aaron Herendeen. Aaron, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
So you've been here a little over a year.
Yep.
And we actually have known each other for a few years.
Yeah, we've been friends for a decade probably.
Yeah, it's been a while. But you've been in, let's call it fine dining for a while yourself. Yeah. You managed a restaurant in Broad Ripple for a while. And then you came here. So what do you really like about here? What's some of the aspects of here that you like? And then we're going to get into a little bit of like your history, family history, but let's just start off with what you really like about the Meridian.
I like most of the staff that works here have management experience. We like to joke that it's the retirement home for former restaurant managers. Joe, our boss, lets us do things how we want to do them. He gives us enough trust so it's not a cookie cutter place. Every server you get is going to have their own style, their own spiel. Some people are big talkers. Some people, not so much. I can crack a couple jokes, but you might not get my whole life story. I like the fact that we have the freedom to serve tables how we want to. I think the guests appreciate that too. So
okay, and you've got a little history of loving history. Your major in college at Purdue was history.
It was, yes, yeah.
So us saving some stories up here in the, I like to call it the fireplace dining room or the lodge. Do you think that has value for how old the Meridian building actually is?
No, absolutely. It gives you a connection to history. Just being in a room that's 130, 140 years old.
That's like 1880s.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah.
So the goal is to be able to do people's life stories.
Yeah.
Do multiple people in the family of their memories of seniors that are alive to have them enjoy it now, and also honor people who are passed on and then career histories. So we're going to dive into a little bit of your past. So start with your parents, and that is Dan and Lynn, and you were born in Warsaw, 1986, 3 days from now.
Yes. Yeah.
And we are currently at 1/1/24, and you were 1/14. So January 14th, 1986.
Yep.
How was that day? Do you remember that day fondly?
The day of my birth, yeah. It's a little hazy. I don't know that, I've been told things. I was a colicky baby.
Right. And you got to be an only child for a decade.
Yes.
And then two people popped out, which are your brothers, Andrew and Adam.
Yes.
So what was that like for you from going from a 10-year-old only kid to all of a sudden two guys?
It was actually a pretty traumatic change. My mom had some health complications. My brothers were born early. So she was sick a lot. So I ended up going from an only child to doing quite a bit of the diaper changings and the feedings. And, it was a rough transition, but I, pretty good with kids now. So,
that's good. I want to hop back to the Meridian just for a second. So obviously you have very high-end cuisine, and it changes up every few months.
Yeah.
Changes up every few months. So since you've been working here, and let's start off with currently, what are some of your favorite dishes that you're currently serving to your guests?
So we have a slow-cooked short rib with a polenta and a beef tomato reduction over the top, and it just melts in your mouth. That's my personal favorite. We have the boar bolognese as a staple here. It's been on the menu, I think, since they've been open. It's wild-caught boar, rich bolognese sauce, lemon ricotta on top. It's been on the menu for 15 years because it is that good. So everything else changes for the season, but the boar is always there. A couple of my favorites there.
So being a history buff, I'm sure that you get to engage your table somewhat.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some really unique regulars that come in here that have a really cool backstory without having to say their name. What are some of the unique individuals and things you've learned about some unique regulars?
My personal favorite regular, I believe he's a retired professor of literature. And he's got that sense of humor where we essentially smack talk each other. And it's like, he comes in and I'm like, not you again, and it's one of those things. And that's kind of my sense of humor, and I appreciate that about him. Very, very intelligent, very well read, but also very down to earth.
And what's his first name?
Bob.
Bob.
Yeah.
What are some others that you can say their first name, but what are some other ones, and how do they really stick out and keep in your memory?
Well, they're the Kovacs. I don't know. Actually, don't know their first name. I just know them as. I think that's kind of like Sarah probably does because she knows everybody. But I've waited on them a few times in the bar. They're regulars. They come in every Friday and sometimes on on Wednesdays. And they're just the happiest, most cheerful people on the planet, and they tip really well. So that's kind of the if you're nice and you give us money, that you're in. So honestly, one of the best parts about this place is that we don't really have an angry clientele. I think it does help because we ply them with martinis, but like they're always there's been a couple exceptions, but for the most part, always kind and pleasant, and ready to have a good time and eat good food. So
have your parents been able to come down and come
they
here?
have not. I would like them to. Because Joe's so generous with friends and family that
And Joe's the general manager.
Joe's the general manager, yes.
Right.
He's always pestering me, bringing family. So we will. It's about a 3-hour drive. So we'll get there eventually.
If you hadn't had a chance to go to SavingStoriesMeridian.com, he does a really good history in his interview of the facility. There's also some owners from the shops in Illinois and city county councilman that lived right next door to the Meridian forever, and he was in charge of Meridian Kessler and whatnot. But let's go into your parents. So how would you describe your mom's personality? What aspects of it do you see in yourself, and what aspects of it do you admire?
My mom has a very good way with words, and I'm not entirely sure if I got that from her or not, but she's also very good at she works in engineering. She's got a mathematical mind, which I definitely did not inherit. And she's always been a strong woman, and I appreciate her for that.
And then same it's for your father.
Did you ever meet my dad? His personality, the way he talks, everything. I'm almost a spitting image. Not necessarily looks wise, but like if you talk to him, you'd be like, "Oh, that's your dad." You get same mannerisms, tone of voice. He's actually a minister for the Brethren Church up north, and he's a very good man, and I admire that about him. So many religious leaders don't follow their own advice, and he's not perfect, but my dad tries to, and I admire that for him. He's got a good moral compass.
So Adam and Andrew, they look the same.
Yeah,
are they identical?
They are identical, yeah.
So what is different about their personalities?
Adam is the more quiet, introspective one, and Andrew is the one that never shuts up. I will say that lovingly, But they are, and you can tell, like, if you spend enough time with them, you can tell the difference. But if you just met them, you would have no idea which one is which. But yeah, personality-wise, the older one, Adam, is quieter and more introspective, and Andrew is the talker of the family.
So what's their industries? What are they into as far as
so my brother Adam works for a actually I believe his company is the one that we use. He works for a linen distribution company. He manages different accounts for fine dining, the linens that are at the table right now. And then my brother Andrew is a machinist.
Okay.
Yeah. So he also got a little bit of mathematical mind that I did not.
All right. So when you were in, let's call it your junior year in high school, that puts your brothers, 5, 6, 7 years old, somewhere in there. What's a memory of them being young and you being in high school that really stands out? Maybe something in the neighborhood, maybe in the woods, maybe you kind of come to their aid, or maybe they're just kind of getting on your nerves around your friends.
There's a lot of getting on the nerves. That was we always had more interesting dynamic since I'm so much older than them. There wasn't a lot of sibling rivalry. It was more of like a third parent kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like, it wasn't necessarily junior year of high school, but when I had to leave to go to college, it was hard on them and hard on me too, because, they were used to me being around all the time. Now suddenly, I'm 18 going off to college, and there's, some separation anxiety there, I think. But when they were kids, we always got along fairly well. I did accidentally shut my brother Andrew's head in a sliding van door. That's why we joke his head's a little bit narrower than Adam's, but he was. They were always getting injured somehow. Like usually not my fault, but they were clumsy.
What about like teaching them to build a tree house, teaching them to ride their bikes, teaching them to do what's the teaching stuff?
It was kind of a joint effort with my dad, but I did teach them how to ride bikes. A lot of the books that they are interested in now and have been their entire life, I introduced them to. I've always been a big science fiction fantasy guy, and I think that the things that I read as a younger man transferred onto them fairly well. So mostly books, I think, was what, and their love of books, which I think is something nice that I did for them.
So before they came around, I'm sure you took a few vacations with your parents before you were 10.
Yeah,
you might be able to remember.
Yeah,
what's some of your favorite places that you went?
We were my dad always said it's because we couldn't afford it, but I think my dad's afraid of flying. So we always did driving vacations. And we've been a big camping family. So we took a trip out to the Grand Canyon. We camped out there, and it was an amazing time. The Smoky Mountains, which I try to go every year still. It's my favorite place in the country. But I remember being very young and doing trips like that. But it was always, we were very much like not a beach kind of family, like go do something, hiking, camping, all that good stuff. And I've kept that love of that my entire life.
So I'd like to touch on the fact of your focus of area of study being history.
Yeah.
There's a lot of key moments in history, and it's as long as anybody knows how long it goes back. What are the areas that really fascinate you about history that you've really dove into?
That's the wonderful thing about history, is that I find something new, some kind of huge society-changing event that I'd never heard of, and I still find that to this day. So it's right now, especially, I like to delve into different topics that I haven't seen explored. I mean, they have tons of books on these things, but I'm very fascinated in the interwar period in Europe between World War I and World War II, the Weimar Republic, and the societal changes that were going on, and what led to. When you're younger, everybody wants to read about the wars. There was World War II, World War I. I'm more fascinated in the societal changes going on in between the wars and what led to the second one. And it's kind of where my focus has been recently. Just listening to podcasts or reading. That's where I'm at anyway.
What about more ancient history? What areas have you dove into?
When I was younger, and I still have a love for early medieval history. They used to call it the Dark Ages, but that's kind of fallen out of favor with historians, because there was a lot going on with the transfer of ancient Greek and Roman knowledge through the Catholic priesthood. And that's kind of what I focused on in college, was the early medieval.
What were some key moments that were, so not only let's call it favorite, but key moments that you really learned that were pivoting points? There were real large moment situations for maybe rule between people taking over, or disease, or new industry. Like what are some of those moments?
The fall of Constantinople in the 1400s, where the Ottomans took over the Eastern Roman Empire, was very formative, because for 1,000 years, the Eastern Roman Empire had been the center of the Western world and Christendom in general. And when it fell, I think it was 1453, it kind of shook the Christian world, because this pillar of, it was almost more important than Rome. This pillar had fallen to a Muslim empire. And people don't really know this, but Christopher Columbus was a very religious man, and part of the reason, and he convinced the King and Queen of Spain to try to find Indy and China is he wanted to finance a crusade to take back Constantinople. And so without it falling, we might not have seen like the American voyages as they were. I'm sure eventually something would have happened, but like the reason that happened then, a big influence on that was the fall of Constantinople. And that's what I like about history is that all these things that don't seem connected perhaps end up being connected. And I think that's why I've always loved history and why I still do. You learn something new every day, connections that you didn't really think about. But yeah, I could talk about history all day. So
well, I want to bring it. I want to bring it local. Is there any unique historical facts about Indianapolis or this area or this building that stand out to you?
This building particularly, because from the way I understand it, was meant to be a way station on the canal. But unfortunately, the canals ended up being a financial disaster for the most part, because by the time that they were mostly built, the railroads had come in and kind of made them obsolete. So I can't imagine this was a way station for very long. I know it's not history, but it's folklore, I guess. We have a ghost here. I'm sure nobody's mentioned the ghost. Nobody's mentioned the ghost. So it's Alice. Her name's Alice. And I don't know, from what I understand, Alice was a former owner of the home here when it was just a residence. And I don't have any personal interactions with Alice, other than just sometimes this place is creepy at night because it's old. But from the time I started, like if there's a bump, unexplained bump, it's Alice is up to something again. So yeah, I can't believe nobody's mentioned the ghost.
Not yet. Any other stories you've heard about the bumps or types of bumps or areas or things?
A lot of times I think it's just the creaking of an old house, but like sometimes you'll hear, what sounds like footsteps where nobody's in the. I hate to throw Flash under the bus on this one, but the bar manager, Flash, won't be in the building by himself. So I don't know if that's. You might have a better.
So maybe something more specific happened to him.
Yeah, and it is. If you're here by yourself, it is very creepy because it's an old house. But there's I don't have any personal tales about it, but I do know that whenever there's bumps that you don't really think should be there, or something falls off that you wonder what happened, it's always Alice.
Okay, so this is kind of a two-parter. What would you like to say in closing? Well, three-parter. To your parents, to your brothers, and to your guests.
To my parents, thank you for always being there for me. And I was a very annoying child, so that wasn't the easiest thing. My brothers, I feel very fortunate that I got to be there and help raise you up a little bit. And it's I love you, and it's very happy to have you in my lives. And to the guests here, thank you for coming in, and please continue to do so. You are the best part of Meridian.
Okay. Well, I thank you for sharing today. Obviously, you're going to be able to hand out your own story card to your guests, and I hope you are able to go on to the site and watch Sarah's and some of the others, because I think you'll really enjoy them.
Yeah, I actually am very curious about Sarah's. I think because that you could probably do a six-parter on Sarah and the stories.
25 minutes.
Yeah,
it was beautiful.
Yeah, no, she's it is funny. She knows my name probably 75% of the people that come in here. I'm always impressed. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sean.
You got it.